Hey guys, Will Beach back for another episode of After Hours Market Talk. Gonna get started here in just a few minutes. Will Beach back for another episode of After Hours Market Talk. Gonna get started here in just a few minutes. Will Beach back for another episode of After Hours Market Talk. So just a reminder, in this I am going over the current day's price movement as well as what I believe will happen in tomorrow's movement. I'm going to try my best to explain what we see on the charts, what indicators we're using, what patterns we might see. We're going to focus mainly on the futures market and the what patterns we might see. Forex markets. We're going to focus mainly on futures markets. We mainly just focus on because not individual stocks, because essentially they're just all talking the same language. If the markets are green, the stocks are probably going to be green, and vice versa. With pending any news, if anything stands out in the stock world that you guys see that is just doing something completely crazy, comment and I will take a look at it. I have no problem looking at individual stocks. It's just not going to be my main focus as we go over what is going on today or tomorrow and what we see. Going to be my main focus as we go over what is going on today or tomorrow and what we see. Going to be my main focus as we go over what is going on today or tomorrow and what we see. Going to be my main focus as we go over what is going on today or tomorrow and what we see. Going to be my main focus as we go over what is going on today or tomorrow. All right. Let's get started. All right. Let's get started. Just so I can see everything going on. Awesome. All right. So right now, obviously the markets are live. And what is going on right now? So basically we have consolidated all day with the holiday of Juneteenth. The stock markets were closed, the futures markets and the forex markets were all running. But typically, when that is the case, it is super low volume and you don't see much price action. However, it's enough price action that can totally throw you for a loop. It's never recommended to trade on these days. Your brokers will give you warnings. It's just not ideal conditions if you are day trading to try and day trade these movements. As you can see here, looking at the NASDAQ, it is super tight consolidation, right? But if you would have got excited in the opener and maybe bought long, you would have quickly been disappointed and probably given up instead of watching and holding on day. All right. So my analysis over the weekend was that we were going to continue short this week, probably reach some kind of new low, and then hopefully see that bounce off the new low into a correction. As of right now, this is a 30-minute chart on the NASDAQ, and you can see that with this tight movement, this is actually, I would say, is not a great sign. It could, completely throw me for a loop, but it's usually not a good sign. It shows very weak movement with all these tiny candles moving sideways. And if we extend this scale out, here's a 4-hour chart. Although it is green and over this 20 as an indicator that might push to retest the 50, it's a 230 point gain. However, I would not anticipate anything bigger than that before we see it kind of trickling back down. The good news is typically if we get a pop here, a pullback, another pop of retest, that's when you get your new low followed by a correction that leads into a decent play for the long side. It doesn't mean we're going to reverse back to a long trend, but it does mean that we will see some upside potential. But that is, we're talking about tomorrow, tonight into tomorrow, probably the next day. So that's why we do this every day, so we can follow along. So I would not be surprised if this did try and reach this top Bollinger Band of 200 pips or so. Sorry, points. And as we look into the ES, we're in a very similar spot, right? Same kind of conditions. We have a dying momentum indicator giving us the ability to push up into a consolidation channel. We have this top range, bottom range that we drew out from the previous week that is still holding true currently, right? We have this high into this low into, now we're moving back, right? So we're watching this channel for the breakout. If I go to the Dow, I have a couple extra lines in here. You can remove these. If I go to the and essentially we would be in the same type of channel here. And essentially grab it, be in the same freezing up on me type of channel here. Give it a second. And essentially grab it. Oh, there it goes. Found it. All right, there we go. Give it a second. And basically what it did was it just kind of closed out my watch list. That's why I was doing that. All right, so then we have the same channel here, except on the Dow, we're actually still technically below the 20 here, even though we have the now dying momentum indicator on the 4-hour here. So what would I be looking for? I'd be looking for it to consolidate down one more time, possibly into testing the 50. It could go either way when it's hovering in the middle, but because it's just kind of below this, if it did another kind of bottom test into a 50 moving average test, I would not be surprised. If we take a look at some of our more common pairs, the JPYs are still green, going in favor of the pair against JPY. When the JPY is the second currency in the pair, that means that the first one is running against that one. So when it's going green, it means the euro is stronger than the Japanese yen. Just like this one means the British pound is stronger than the Japanese yen when you're green, and vice versa when you're red. USD against JPY had been running very strong here for a long time. These all the forex markets also had basically a consolidation day. You couldn't see too many of the movements in the forex pairs as well. You couldn't see too many of the movements in the forex pairs as well. You couldn't see too many of the movements in the forex pairs as well. We have Euro USD, which is always a big one. You can see here kind of this double top off of the 50 moving average here. Always a big one. I expect it to reject kind of this double top off of the 50 moving average here before trying to move up again. I expect it to reject kind of this double top off of the 50 moving average here before trying to move up again. Daily chart, here's the bottom. Here's basically the top of the range. You had some retest a little bit higher, but it failed it. So we're kind of watching this channel for a breakout from here. Here's basically the top of the range. You had some retest a little bit higher, but it failed it. So we're kind of watching this channel for a breakout from here. I do expect these pairs against the Japanese yen to retest these previous highs. So we're kind of watching this channel for a breakout. So keep an eye out for that, because that's a couple hundred pips on all of these moves on the pairs that are against the Japanese yen.
For that, because that's a couple hundred pips on all
Should
of
look
these
something
moves
like that.
on the pairs that are against the Japanese yen. For that, because that's a couple hundred pips on all of
Should look
these
something
moves
like that.
on the pairs that are against the Japanese yen. Because that's a couple hundred pips on all of these moves on the pairs that are against the Japanese yen. Because that's a couple hundred pips on all of these moves on the pairs that are against the.
If you guys want to see the correlation between some of the tech stocks and the NASDAQ and such, I can show you those. Tesla is the S&P, right? So it's the ES correlation. So on the daily chart for that, you can see the Tesla is still hovering pretty far below here. However, it's not in a momentum state currently.
You can see,
so it's in that would be basically in consolidation at this point, since it's not in momentum. Here's the bottom of it, and here's the top.
that would be basically
roughly
consolidation at this point.
So we'd be looking at this channel. The S&P on the ES here on the daily is still far below, kind of bouncing, and it is technically still in a momentum state.
S&P on the ES here on the daily is still far below, kind of bouncing.
Let's look at the correlation between Apple and the NASDAQ daily chart. Apple is still currently showing in a momentum state to the downside. So that means we are not in consolidation. This is very cautious on any upward moves, expecting more downward moves.
So that means
that correlates with the NASDAQ here. They're almost the exact same chart.
moves, expecting more downward.
The only difference is the NASDAQ here has not fully crossed over for a continuation on momentum, but it is facing that direction. So we're obviously cautious about this one.
For a continuation on momentum, but it is facing that direction. So we're obviously cautious about this one. For a continuation on momentum, but it is facing that direction. So we're obviously cautious about this one.
All right, guys, let's go into a little bit of chart analysis and what we're looking at and how we build our charts.
All right, guys, let's go into.
I can just show you right here on the NASDAQ. What I will do is I will remove
charts.
All these old drawings.
I can just show you right here on the NASDAQ. What I will do is I will remove charts.
Do it.
All these old drawings. I can just show you right here on the NASDAQ. What I will do is I will remove charts.
And on the studies, we will remove all studies. So when you don't have any studies helping you out, this is what the chart looks like. And actually, I'll go to Apple just because that's what we're all familiar with. This is a crazy daily chart with no indicators on. Let's go back, let's say, 5 years.
Because that's what we're all familiar with.
Right? So this is an insane uptrend over the last 5 years with a massive pullback over the last 6 months or so.
Right?
So what we do is we basically start out with moving averages, right? So I want to know where my trend is, whether it's up or down, over long periods and short periods of time.
So I want to know where my.
So if I was going to go in here, I'd be looking for a long
periods and short periods.
Moving average. Usually the exponential is slow, and I'll go ahead and bring it out to about 150.
Moving average.
I'll make the width of that x2, and I like to see that as a big red line. That's my preference.
Moving average. I'll make the width of that x2.
So you can see here, over the last 5 years, we've only gone below it a handful of times. Most of the time, if it gets back down to it, it just rejects off here and continues long. Anytime it's gone short below it has been minimal.
Most of the time, if it gets back down to it, it just rejects off here and continues long. Anytime it's gone short below it has been minimal. Most of the time, if it gets back down to it, it just rejects off here and continues long.
How is this for the echo? Is the echo better now? I think I had 2 mics running. All right, perfect. Sorry about that. does that sometimes. All right. So, so then if we are looking long term, you can see here that our trend has now broken to this downside here, and we have extended pretty far below it. So this is where we get into the, how much farther below it is it going to go before it retraces back to the moving average, right? Because that's essentially what a moving average is. It is 150 of these ticks gives me this average. So if I go into edit my studies again, I'm going to go in and get a simple moving average. And I like to use 50 on this. Also a width of 2, and I like to use yellow. Okay, once this 50, you have shorter range indicators of long and short. So you can see even when it breaks the shorter range, the longer range usually catches it and can reverse, right? But now what you have is a crossover between the two. When you get these crossovers, you typically get a short retrace, but now the trend is technically down. On these smaller time scales, the 4-hour and the hourly, they have crossed over quite a while ago. This one was back in April, and it has not retraced, crossed back above since. You had a couple zigzags. This would be a large scale consolidation that, if you watched a weekly chart, this would be a range on a weekly chart that would look almost like nothing, as you can see here, right? So you had this range here that ended up consolidating, and then it broke to the bottom. So these are upper indicators we like to use, Bollinger Bands as well. The Bollinger Band will have a default 20 SMA in the center of it, and that gives you one more crossover between the 50 and the 20, which gives you short-term crossovers for day traders, things like that. Swing traders might like to use them on the smaller scale. So I can show you this right here. If we load in a study of a Bollinger Bands are also very good for consolidation ranges. Let's get off the 1 minute. Let's go back to like an hour. Has a default deviation of 2. And that's from the center line to the bottom and the center line to the top. And you can see that these crossovers, when you're looking at the middle here, also indicate something similar with a shorter range of the move, meaning if you get a 20 that crosses a 50, the longevity of that move is not going to be nearly as long as a 50 crossing a 150. The shorter the moving averages, the shorter the move, larger crossovers are going to be larger moves. Now, unless you color code and know what you're looking at, this starts looking like a mess. That one's a 1. Put that as green. And what I actually do is check out a guy named Stephen Primo, Strategy 3A, I believe. He'll teach you a Bollinger Band strategy that revolves around these tighter ranges of the Bollinger Band. So it looks something like this. And then you can see when you get these breakouts a little bit easier. Awesome to see you too, Oh. Right. So as we go into tomorrow, I do expect this to start trending down a little bit more. I'm going to go back. You can save all of your different setups in your study sets if you're using Thinkorswim, and that way you can just easily pull them back up. So again, as we move into tomorrow, we are still looking for this to pull short. We're going to look on like a 30-minute chart. So we're basically running a little bit of a correction right now. So again, we wouldn't be, it wouldn't be too much to see correction phases that, reach a couple hundred points and onto the long side before we see it kind of stall out. The NASDAQ is ready now to kind of start going there. You can see it's kind of starting that big push up. Starting to see some bigger candles moving in that range. But again, if we're looking at the daily, the hourly, we still have a lot of resistance levels ahead of us. 4 hour again. So to see a 200 point move here on the NASDAQ, it would not be anything crazy. As soon as it hits here, you have basically then created a double top, something in this range, right? When it retests here, anything that would break this level here would then basically indicate another short run. So we're watching for this area right here to get tested. Watching for this area to get tested and see what happens in that range. And just my prediction is that it's going to get rejected off of that, and we're going to see it retrace back. Take one last look here at GJ. Still kind of hovering this consolidation range. We're looking for long side push. It has basically done what we call a momentum reset, and that's when the ADX comes all the way down below the 15 value. And that means it's basically consolidated so much at this point that it's going to have a brand new breakout. We just don't know what direction it's going to be until a resistance or a support is broken. So it'd be something like, is it going to break out of that level or that level, right? So we're watching here. Obviously right now it's consolidating and still moving upward. So a breakout to the upside would be anticipated. However, it's not guaranteed. The daily chart has this kind of fading momentum, but we're looking for that retest up into this range. The weekly chart has a stochastic that has now kind of crossed this downside. This indicator is not permanently down. This is the start of the week, which means if everything else pushes up, then it will also push back up. These are two moving averages. Everything you see on the screen is a moving average. Therefore, it is one moving average testing another moving average. And if there's enough support on that moving average, it will start bouncing off of it. And this is what the monthly chart looks like. All right, guys, that about wraps it up. We've covered all the basics on the NASDAQ, Dow, and S&P, as well as Euro USD and GJ. We looked at Apple and Tesla and a couple of the indicators we use to determine trend and momentum. So for now, keep trading safe because any long move could easily be rejected by resistance. We have not yet retested support and confirmed a new trend yet. So we're therefore still in short-sided. And that's pretty much it. Look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode tomorrow.